Hello, and welcome to this week's West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, our weekly show where we bring you stories from the world's most volatile region. With just days left for Joe Biden to take office, the Trump administration has made an 11th-hour decision to designate the Yemen's Houthi Rebels as a foreign terrorist organization, with 80% of the war-torn country's population in need of help. A move is likely to worsen the Yemen's growing humanitarian crisis.
These are the last remaining days of the Trump presidency. But the administration is busy making last-minute decisions, ones that can change the fate of West Asia for the foreseeable future. The administration will now designate Yemen's Houthi rebels as a terrorist organization. The decision was announced by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. In a statement, he said, and I quote, "The designations are intended to hold Ansar Allah accountable for its terrorist acts." The Houthis, however, remain defiant. Political commander Muhammad Ali al-Houthi condemned the move, saying that they have the right to respond. So unless the US Congress blocks the decision, the Houthis will be blacklisted on the 19th of January. Just one day before the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden.
In more than 60 cases.
The 11th-hour decision was met with severe backlash. It was rebuked by both Democratic and Republican lawmakers. The United Nations asked for a reversal of the decision, and international aid groups swiftly condemned the move. Some even called on Joe Biden to reverse the decision. Many have called this move pure diplomatic vandalism.
Under the best case scenario now, President-elect Biden will come in and on day one, hour one, minute one, revoke these designations. Even under that scenario, the message will have been sent out to the businesses and banks working with Yemeni companies and Yemeni markets all over the world, and it will spook them. And Yemen's markets can't afford to be spooked.
So who are the Houthis? And why is the US putting them on the terror list? The Houthi rebels are officially known as Ansar Allah. The group joined a wider national uprising in Yemen in 2011. It later stormed Yemen's capital of Sana'a in 2014, ousting the Saudi-led coalition government and prompting President Mansour Hadi to flee. While they receive widespread support from Iran, it is not clear how deep that relationship goes. The Houthis currently have thousands of fighters under their control. Even after several years of stalemate, Houthis maintain their hold on Sana'a and most big urban centers. For many in Yemen, the Houthis are the de facto authority.
If the US labels Ansar Allah as a terrorist group, then this will mean that the entire Yemeni people will be included in the list of terrorism.
The decision of the American Foreign Ministry of designating the Ansarullah group as terrorists is a wrong decision because it will further complicate the conditions in Yemen and it will be catastrophic, and we hope as Yemenis that the attacks on Yemen will stop and that the siege will be lifted. This is what we hope for.
The country's government has, however, lauded the decision. Yemen's foreign minister said that the decision could push Houthis towards peace.
I think this is an important decision, as it can be used as a tool by the international community to pressure this group and push them towards peace. It is also part of a policy of imposing maximum pressure on Iran and its arms in the region, including the Houthi group.
The move could complicate Biden's efforts to restart diplomacy with Iran. Should he reverse the Trump administration's decision, resetting the status quo could take a long time. Something that Yemen cannot afford right now. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Yemen has been crippled by years of civil war. Crucial aid is running out. The country is facing a catastrophic situation. So what will this designation mean for the war-torn nation?
Yemen has been described as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. The country has been mired in conflict since 2014. It all started with a fight between the Saudi-led coalition and rebels. Since then, the war in the West Asian country has killed over 100,000 people, leaving millions suffering from food and medical shortages. Now, this Houthi designation could spell more trouble for Yemen. Designating Yemen's Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization could disrupt crucial peace efforts in the war-torn country. The United Nations is trying to restart political talks to end the war. But the designation could create legal problems to including the Houthis.
I think the negotiations will be greatly affected by this decision. Today, the United States wants to block any paths that lead to stopping the aggression on Yemen and to negotiations.
As for the nationwide ceasefire in Yemen, the Houthis could break off back-channel talks with Saudi Arabia. This means a further escalation of violence in the country, something that the country cannot afford right now. But the most damning impact could be to the delivery of life-saving aid.
We in Yemen hope that the US and other countries can support the efforts of the UN envoy in bringing peace to Yemen. But the decision of designating Ansar Allah as a terrorist group will make things more complicated.
The Houthis control Yemen's capital of Sana'a and the north. The majority of the country's population lives there. This forces international aid groups to work with them. Humanitarian organizations have to get permits to carry out aid. Permits are usually handed out by the Houthis in the region. And that's not all. With the shortage of medicines and basic food items, 80% of Yemen's population relies on international aid to survive. Child malnutrition is at a record high, and the numbers keep soaring every day. Agencies depend on the Houthis to ensure delivery of food and other aid, and the move may disrupt the crucial commercial imports. While the US has assured measures to allow crucial humanitarian activity, citizens remain terrified that food and other supplies will run out. With Yemen facing what could be the world's biggest famine in decades, this designation could leave millions on the verge of starvation. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Like always, we will continue to bring you all the latest updates from the heart of the conflict. But don't go anywhere, we have a lot more lined up for you in today's episode. First, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making headlines across West Asia.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan receives his COVID-19 vaccine in front of TV cameras. The move is aimed to eliminate any public doubts about the effectiveness of the shot. Turkey has rolled out a nationwide vaccination program, administering the shots developed by China's Sinovac to health workers. The Iranian Navy reveals its new homegrown helicopter carrier ship, the Makran. During a drill of the Iranian coast in the Gulf of Oman, the carrier joins the country's naval fleet supporting operations in the northern part of the Indian Ocean, in the Bab el-Mandab Strait and the Red Sea.
Al-Qaeda has a new home base It is the Islamic Republic of Iran.
In a speech before leaving office, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo alleges that Iran has become a new home base for the Al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, Tehran has not taken Pompeo's assertion lightly, immediately rejecting his claim. Kuwait's cabinet ministers resigned just a month after joining office. This comes following a dispute with opposition lawmakers over issues including re-election of the parliament speaker. The resignation comes after a majority of lawmakers backed a request to question the Prime Minister Sheikh Sabah. Turkey is running out of water, staring at its most severe drought in a decade. Poor rainfall has led to a dry winter season, with major cities facing serious water shortages. Reports say that Istanbul could run out of water in 45 days.
Israel seems to be in a race against time. It is moving forward with the approval of new settlements in the West Bank. Now this threatens to cut off parts of the city claimed by Palestinians. Ironically, the approval comes in the twilight of the Trump presidency. Our next report tells you more.
This is the West Bank, a chunk of land located on the west bank of River Jordan and surrounded by Israel on all sides. While it was occupied by Israel in the 1967 war, Palestinians claimed all of West Bank as part of a future independent state. But of the 3 million people living out here, many are Jewish Israeli citizens. The Israelis living out here are called settlers. They live in the West Bank but are citizens of Israel. These settlements enjoy widespread backing among Israelis, many of whom view them as a religious, national, or strategic necessity. Israel cites historical and biblical links to the region, and many Jews look at it as an integral part of the biblical land of Israel. Over 460,000 Israeli settlers reside in the occupied West Bank. There are around 130 officially recognized settlements scattered across the West Bank. The largest are home to thousands of people, with apartment complexes, public parks, shopping malls, and factories. But not all of those living here moved because of their love for Israel. House prices are often cheaper than in major cities of Israel, and settlement blocks are connected to the rest of Israel by well-maintained roads. While Israeli authorities maintain these lands were built on vacant or unused land, Palestinians say the land is often bought from Palestinian owners through middlemen. Most countries view settlements Israel has built in this territory as illegal, as an obstacle to peace with the Palestinians. In the US brokered normalization deal with the UAE and Bahrain, Israel had promised to put on hold plans to annex parts of the West Bank. But the recent approval for more settlements means that Israel is pushing forward with its plans in the West Bank. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered construction plans for some 800 settler homes. The homes will be built north of Jerusalem and northern West Bank. This approval comes in the last days of the Trump presidency. Over the last 4 years, the Trump administration has voiced support for settlements, moving away from the traditional US foreign policy in West Asia. This go-ahead could also help mute criticism for Netanyahu from settler leaders as another election looms over Israel. But the approval could draw wrath from the Biden administration. Biden has pledged a more even-handed approach in the region, aiming to revive peace talks between Israel and Palestine. But the recent approval could force Biden's hand, forcing the Israel government into an unnecessary confrontation after 20th January. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Saudi Arabia is building an ambitious futuristic city entirely from scratch. When completed, Neom is expected to be 33 times the size of New York. But why is Saudi Arabia building the city in the middle of the deep desert? Our next report tells you all about it.
An artificial moon. Beaches that would glow in the dark. Robotic butlers. And flying taxis. While it sounds straight out of a sci-fi novel, this is being built deep in Saudi Arabia's deserts. The new megacity is called Neom, deriving its name from the Greek word for new and the Arabic term for future. The brainchild of maverick Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Neom has been billed as humanity's next chapter. Once completed, it will be 33 times the size of New York. Neom is a crucial part of the Crown Prince's 2030 vision, and he has left no stones unturned. The glitzy futuristic city will cost a whopping $500 billion. And to fund this mega project, Saudi has even sold 1.5% stake of the state-owned oil giant Aramco. MBS has now gone one step further and even announced that the city will be carbon-free.
A 170 million people city with a length of 170 kilometers that preserves 95% of the nature within Neom's lands. Zero cars, zero streets and zero CO2 emissions. One will be able to run their daily errands in just a 5-minute walk, and one will be able to travel from the farthest point to the other in 20 minutes, with a 30% deduction in infrastructure cost. A 30% increase in the quality of products offered and with 100% renewable energy. The line is a revolutionary project that puts the human first.
First announced in 2017 with much fanfare, Neom seeks to diversify the economy of the world's largest oil exporter. It is likely to contribute $48 billion to the kingdom's GDP. Neom will also have its own parallel legal system, one that will be separate from the rest of Saudi Arabia. Residents and visitors to the city will probably be allowed to drink alcohol and enjoy fine dining. It is a futuristic version of paradise, but not everything is going according to plan. Foreign capital and investment for the city has not been forthcoming. Western investors are unnerved by the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. While construction is going ahead despite the challenges of the pandemic, the historic drop in oil prices has not helped the kingdom. The funds required to build Neom will inevitably require oil wealth. And no one knows that better than Saudi Arabia. While it hopes to finish construction of the business zone by 2025, it looks like not everyone is keen to be a part of Saudi Arabia's new future. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
The impact of Iraq's recent devaluation of the dinar is palpable in Mosul's markets. Without foot traffic, everyone working in the markets is feeling the pinch. Our next report tells you more.
Once bustling with customers, Mosul's markets are now left deserted. The recent devaluation of the Iraqi dinar has affected everyone, from shopkeepers to customers.
Even the bottle of oil that used to be 1,000 Iraqi dinars is now 3,000 Iraqi dinars. All the shops near us are closed. Why are they closed? They tell us we don't know. The price of $1 US will be, which means we don't know what our fate is.
Last month, Iraq's central bank had devalued its currency, a first for the country since the US-led invasion in 2003. The Iraqi dinar was devalued by over 20%. It is the first such reduction in exchange rates made in decades. The devaluation was in response to a severe liquidity crisis, one triggered by historical low oil prices and the coronavirus pandemic. According to estimates by the International Monetary Fund, Iraq is set to see its economy shrink by 11%, while poverty doubles to 40% in the country. This comes as the government struggles to make payments. But the measure has sparked public outrage.
The rise in the price of the dollar against the Iraqi dinar has great impacts on people's lives because the goods in the market are imported in dollars. So this rise in dollar prices has a great negative impact on those with limited incomes and the poor.
The inflation has added to the many hardships that Iraqis face daily, and the growing economic crisis has left them weary. People took to the streets of several Iraqi cities. This especially included the elderly, who said that the value of their pensions had been cut.
في وقت إنه الإنتاج العراقي أو الناتج المحلي هو غير كافي إنه يسد هذا الفراغ.
The local production is not developed enough to fill the gap that will come. So people will be forced to buy the imported goods, and there will be more poverty or even a collapse of the economic situation as a whole.
الحالة الاقتصادية بصورة أكبر.
Even though protests remain largely peaceful, riot police were deployed outside the central bank. While the devaluation will give oil-rich Iraq more dinars to make urgent payments, setting a new rate has been a delicate balancing act. It has to satisfy the government's needs for liquidity without impacting the average Iraqis. But many believe it is the poor who are paying the price in Iraq. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay home, stay safe. I am Radi Francis. You are watching WION, World is One.